Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Matt Bernier. Race number 8 at Churchill Downs on Kentucky Oaks Friday is the Grade 2 Alysheba Stakes. Let's take a look at the field. It features last year's Kentucky Derby winner, the number 3 Always Dreaming, a Keeneland graduate, Johnny Velasquez back aboard. And Matt, he's the controlling speed of this race, no question about it.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, it's a little bit tough when you get a big race like this where there's one horse that has just such a monumental pace advantage. But at the same time, you know, you and I talked about it a little bit before we came on here. They're Always Dreaming. He's got some serious questions that he needs to answer. Can he still run? Was the Kentucky Derby last year nothing more than a bit of a mirage? Because really, ever since then, he hasn't done a heck of a lot. And I wasn't blown away by his Gulfstream Park Mile.
He came back in the Gulfstream Park Mile. As you mentioned, it was his first race since the Travers, and perhaps you could make the argument he was a short horse off the layoff, prepping in a one-turn race. I was a little disappointed he couldn't go past Conquest Big E, and you and I are fans of Conquest Big E, but if Always Dreaming is Always Dreaming, he's supposed to beat that horse layoff or no.
100%. And not only did he not go by him, he got turned away pretty easily. I mean, a Conquest Big E won by 3, and sure, he might have been out there in a relatively easy lead, but if Always Dreaming was the horse that people were billing him to be, and again, I understand maybe circumstances off the layoff, a distance a little bit shorter than ideal, probably better going 2 turns, I still just kind of felt like he should have been closer than what he was, even though he may have a tactical advantage here. I don't trust him.
Timeform US agrees with us that he does have a tactical advantage, as we see by this pace projector. Your blue bar indicates that Timeform US believes that this race will favor horses on or near the early lead, and there he is, Always Dreaming out there on the lead, stretching out to 2 turns, second off the layoff. Really no excuses on paper if he breaks well for John Velasquez. You told me before we came on there's a good chance of rain in the Louisville area Thursday night into Friday. That would help Always Dreaming, who of course won the Derby over a wet, fast track. Conversely, at the back of the pack and perhaps up against it from a pace scenario is the number 1 Good Samaritan, winner of the Grade 2 Jim Dandy, over Always Dreaming. Now, he made his seasonal debut at the Fairgrounds in the New Orleans handicap. It was a last to first gambit. I think you give him points because he overcame a lack of pace, but you look at the horses in that race, we had that unfortunate situation with the player, and then the other horses just really haven't come back to distinguish themselves.
Yeah, it's not as though he was beating up on a great field, and you brought up the favorite that day. Unfortunately, the player got injured. You know, this is a tough call for me here with Good Samaritan because I think he is a very talented horse. I still think he's better on turf. I understand why they continue to run him on dirt, though. He was compromised by the pace in that race in New Orleans, but it was against inferior company. Now, if you think he's compromised by pace, not only is it arguably against a horse that may have just as much talent, if you believe in a horse like Always Dreaming, which again, you and I are a little bit skeptical, but he's the one with the tactical advantage. You also factor in some of the other horses that are going to get the jump on him. There's just a lot to overcome at what's going to be a short price. I don't know that he's going to be favorite, but I think he's going to be vying for favoritism. I picked him second. I think he's going to come with a legitimate run, and maybe this sets him up beautifully, whether it is the Met Mile they choose to run him in next or somewhere else.
So you're not exactly saying this mile and a 16th is too short for him, that it's a good distance for him. A mile and an 1/8 I always thought was kind of his distance, but you like him at a shorter distance with pace.
Yeah, I don't have a problem necessarily with the distance. I don't like him getting out to a 1 1/4 miles. I think a 1 1/8 miles like you is probably his bread and butter, but I think he's very capable at these sort of any middle distance, whether it's a mile and a 16th. And again, if this is nothing more than a stopgap to get to a race like the Met Mile, you know what? If he comes with a serious finish and he can't quite get there, I think the connections will be fine.
Awesome Slew, the number 8, is a millionaire. He is a graded stakes winner at this distance. He won a week edition of the Smarty Jones back in 2016, but he's been plying his trade mostly as a one-turn sprinter miler. Last time out in the Carter, his first start of the year, he just caught a freakish Pletcher horse in Army Mule. He got the fast pace he needed. He just wasn't good enough. I thought he ran just fine, but I am worried about him stretching out.
Agreed, 100%. I thought that was a winning effort from this horse in that most recent race. The problem is he ran into a freak that day in Army Mule. I don't like him going 2 turns. I kind of feel like we figured that out last year or 2 years ago, even before Mark Casse got him, where he flopped in that Sunshine Millions at a 1 1/8 miles, and then all of a sudden, once Casse got him, they turned him back to 1 turn, and he just really blossomed. I feel like that's what he wants to do. I would have much rather seen him on Saturday afternoon in a race like the Churchill Downs. I understand that's a salty group, but I don't particularly love him at this distance. But again, if you want to sort of call it a built-in mild turn back, If this is nothing more than a stopgap to get to the Met Mile, I can understand.
Your favorite son, Opportunity, is in here, the number 5. He's banked only $4.4 million in his career, and he won the Clark Handicap at Churchill Downs in 2014. He's always run well at Churchill Downs, and last time out, his seasonal debut, I know it was a 1.5-mile race against inferior competition, but it was nice to see that Opportunity still has a little zip on the fastball. The problem is the lack of pace up front.
Yeah, lack of pace is certainly going to hurt him. He's very, very consistent, and I think that's one of the best things that you can say about him. You know what you're going to get more often than not. Probably a high 90, low 100 kind of buyer. The lack of pace hurts. I think this distance is not good for him. I think he does better with additional distance out to that 1.125 1.25 miles, even 1.5 miles. And I wonder, too, if this is sort of a way to get him to another race, maybe a race like the Brooklyn on the Belmont Stakes undercard.
The 7 Hawakam would not mind a little bit of moisture in the racetrack. He showed that affinity for a wet track in winning the Grade 3 Razorback 2 starts back. The problem was, he just was able to ride a gold rail that day with the typical Corey Lanerie rail skimming special. It was a beautiful ride. He ran hard that day. Then he came back in the Oaklawn Handicap, and maybe he's no match for horses like City of Light and Accelerate, but he just didn't run at all.
No, he didn't pick his feet up, and I'm not entirely sure what that was all about. Maybe he needed one off the layoff, and now he's going to be tighter second time out. If it does rain, move him up. His overall record at Churchill Downs, a little bit spotty, 1 for 8, but he has hit the board on 5 occasions. This is his distance. The problem is he's another one that could be pace compromised.
Nick Zito keeps on going with Giuseppe the Great. It looked like he got a little bit of a pace last time out in the Ben Ali at Keeneland, and he wasn't able to make up much ground. His buyers are just simply too light to compete with these in his current form.
Yeah, he's too light right now. He's going to need to run the race of his life, and even that might not be good enough.
Hence won 2 derbies last year, the Sunland and the Iowa Derby. This is going to be his second start of the form cycle, and I thought Shotgun Cowboy ran a pretty big race last time out on a fast pace to beat him. The runner-up, Rated R Superstar, came back to win the Ben Ali with a 93 buyer. But again, I know it was off the layoff, and maybe Steve Asmussen was using that race as just a prep. I needed to see Hence run more late considering the fast pace, and I didn't see it.
Didn't he have everything go his way in that spot where the pace was ballistic? He was getting a jump on some of the other horses coming from off the pace, and I thought he just flattened out down the lane. Maybe that's a sign of a horse that needed one, but let's also call a spade a spade. Even at Hence's best, he's not good enough to win a race like this.
Always dreaming the horse to catch. We think, though, that the number 4, Backyard Heaven, is the X factor in this race, and as we take a look at our selections, that's where we're going. This horse has only raced 3 times. It's a shame that Chad Brown's had some problems keeping him sound, but his last race, a 108 buyer performance, was visually impressive. I know he did not beat anything. He has yet to beat a good horse in his career and is getting the acid test. He's stretching out around 2 turns. He might have to be the one chasing Always Dreaming, but I think this horse has a lot of ability.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know, there's so many things about him that I like. He's got a little bit of versatility going 2 starts back. He was mid-pack in behind horses, and boy, he just angled out. And Irad Ortiz rode him like he was on an absolute monster, just engulfed that field. I know that was against maidens, but it was also over a little bit of a wet track, so factor that in if it does rain on Friday. And the most recent run, I understand maybe Mr. Buff wouldn't be able to run with these types, but the fact that this horse, Backyard Heaven, is as lightly raced as he is, he's already run fast, he's in great hands with Chad, and the fact that the connections see fit that, you know what, let's try, this is his first spot in a graded stakes race as opposed to running in a graded stakes race at Belmont Park or somewhere up in New York. We're going to ship him out of town. I think it's a very confident move. If you are a numbers player, Backyard Heaven at 9-2 would be stealing. I don't think you're going to get 9-2. I think he's probably in that 3-1, 7-2 range. But you know what? Even at that number, I'll take my shot that he can be the one to go after Always Dreaming and running down.
They easily could have run him in the Westchester, the local prep for the Met Mile at Belmont coming up this weekend. I think you make a good point about shipping and taking on the big boy and Always Dreaming. We're going Backyard Heaven. Give me numbers.
In this race, I'm going to go 4-1-3-5. I realize Good Samaritan might be compromised by the pace, but I think talent-wise, he is there. And look, let's be honest. We may not pick Always Dreaming in here. If he can't win this race with this pace situation, he's in deep trouble.
It's a fair point. 4, 8, 1, and 3 for me. I think Awesome Slew runs well again. Just the distance gets him. But I'm really looking forward to see what we get from our top pick, Backyard Heaven. In race number 8 at Churchill Downs, the Grade 2 Alysheba on Kentucky Oaks Friday. It has an approximate post time of 2:53 Eastern. Good luck.